they began to look for a worldview, they could not find it in the Western Christian, Judeo-Christian tradition because of our reticence to accept anything supernatural. So they looked to a more Eastern philosophy and then became more of a pantheistic, non-personal force or entity or universe, whatever, to actually fit with what their beliefs are. Now, I believe the whole Christian perspective to quantum physics is very clearly within the Bible, and there isn't no need to see it as a separation, but we did that, and therefore we allowed all those quantum physicists to go and find a worldview which inherently is not right, and reject a worldview which is right because we made it unpalatable through not accepting science or not seeing that the Bible has a lot to say about those things, just not usually in scientific terms.
I had been singing and purposely vibrating a lot when I was singing. It was a lot of very low notes. And the next thing I knew, I was out flying over that volcano in New Zealand. And that was kind of different.
Okay.
Have you ever experienced anything like that before?
So were you flying after it erupted or before?
Yes, I was actually there as part of a mission to, from what I understand, that there was more than just me. I don't know who the others were, but we were helping direct those who had died. Their spirits had not gone where they were supposed to because of the violence of what had happened. And we were picking up and taking where they were going.
Okay. I mean, trauma is a huge issue. You certainly don't want any lingering spirits or souls around. So ideally, helping them move on is a good thing. I mean, I think frequency and the frequencies that we make, whether they be conscious or just released from our spirit, do connect us with certain things that are happening within creation. And I think that does draw us and it connects us. I think when we speak in tongues, I think that also is a frequency that our spirit is now communicating and connecting with to creation. Beyond, initially when, I used to speak in tongues or sing in tongues, it was very much directed towards God. Now my spirit has become more mature. It is the language of the spirit that's directed towards creation as sons. And I think that connects us. So whatever we're producing, I think there is a resonance that forms that does connect us or draw us towards certain things. And I've had that happen a number of times. That's something in my spirit has just connected. Now, years ago, I remember just bursting with tongues at certain occasions, not knowing what I was doing, why I was doing it, and then subsequently found out that friend was in this situation at exactly the same moment, and my spirit obviously was aware of it, but I wasn't in the soul, and seemingly connected to God to ask him to help, I guess. I mean, would be my take on it then. I think now I believe that's more connected to creation with a view that we are as sons looking to set creation free from the groaning, and hence maybe the low frequency that you were emitting was connecting up to a pretty low frequency, I guess, within a volcano and that situation. And I imagine there were a whole load of groaning spirits, I mean, that you were able to connect to. And I think that's something we should become more, I think, more connected to, or it should become more frequent, that type of thing, as we begin to connect and our spirits do begin to carry a frequency that creation responds to or draws us towards. And sometimes a low frequency will be entrained to a higher frequency when we carry that higher frequency and creation responds to us and comes into alignment with that higher frequency, which would be the will of God, love, whatever, you know, in a sense, joy, peace. You know, a lot of it is carrying a frequency, whereas groaning is a frequency you could relate to sadness or despair or hopelessness or disappointment. You know, so many emotions that I think are low frequency emotions that people have, but I do believe sentience within creation also has. And it makes sense for us to begin to engage with it and connect with it, because that is our role, you know. And I think some of the revelation around elementals, I think their role is to help us to connect, and we need to reconnect with them, I think, in the view of how we connect to creations in a sentient way. I think there's more revelation coming around that whole dynamic as well. So it sounds like a very interesting encounter. You know, I can see why, and I think those people who are more sensitive to these things are beginning to connect in that sort of way more and more. So sounds good.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I also think the helping people move on is something that is going to become much more well, I guess more commonplace, and in some senses, I guess at that point, if you then take it to a next step, rather than guiding them to where they should go, you may well point them to where you want them to go, and share the good news with them so that they respond to the good news there before they get anywhere else. Yeah, that again would be where this would be heading. Rather than just, okay, well, those who are believers are going to go to one place and those who aren't are going to go somewhere else. At that point, we can make sure that we present them with a choice and give them that choice to enter in through Jesus rather than to enter in not through Jesus. And, you know, so that might be something that becomes more commonplace as people begin to get more confident in their roles within that, in terms of preaching the good news, sharing the good news with those. I know those who are dealing with alien human spirits or souls, lingering human spirit souls, are, some of those are preaching to those souls rather than delivering them and getting rid of them or casting them out. They are preaching to those lingering human souls, as I'd rather call it that, the good news, and seeing them respond and then go and reconnect with their spirit. Yeah.
One of the things when we took them up was that, and it sounds really weird to some people, I know, but because it says in the scripture that we can remit sins.
Yeah.
I did. And almost all of them chose to accept the Father's forgiveness and go in, but there were 2 or 3 who chose not to. And from what I can understand was they had already decided that they were not fit for heaven.
Yeah.
That they had been told that they were on their way to hell, and that was the only option for them. And that was the only option they would receive. Yeah,
and unfortunately that is the case a lot, because as a person thinks in their heart, as they believe, then they function according to those beliefs, and they've been told that terrible thing by mostly believers, but sometimes their own culture, because they're not always come from a Christian background, and there are other cultures and other religious backgrounds that also may well be negative towards certain people. But it is a terrible thing that that's what they believe, and effectively they're carrying guilt, shame, condemnation, which hinders them and when you go and preach to people, spirits who are imprisoned in the fire, in the consuming fire of God's love, that is the biggest objection. That's the biggest issue. They do not feel worthy. They feel guilty and condemned. They feel in anguish because of their own life, behavior, choices, and that stops them. And you've got to overcome that. You've got to present a good news that forgiveness is for all, not based on works, but based on what Jesus did on the cross, which was to take the sins of everyone and reconcile everybody. And it's quite difficult for those. You'd think it would be easy for them to respond. It isn't.
They can't forgive themselves.
It's a belief system, just like so many believers don't believe the truth. Even though it's there, it's in the Bible, people tell them the truth over and over again, and yet they don't believe it. Why? Because they're conditioned by life and what's happened to them and their experiences not to believe it. And therefore they don't live in the truth, which is the truth, and they live in the lies. And that, I think that's both people this side of death and those people on the other side. And it is sad, isn't it, that we've actually done that. For most of the case, we've told people that they're heading there. I know it's not just Christians, because I think in general, there is a societal, cultural thing that, hey, certain people are never going to get, in the good place because of their life. But that's so contradictory to what Jesus came to preach. That, hey, there is nothing that can separate us from the love of God. And I do think we've got to change our method of sharing good news and stop sharing bad news with people. Let's just turn it to real good news. Hey, God's already forgiven you. He already loves you. Will you receive that? Which is very different from the way we presented it. You're not good enough because you've done all these things. You're not forgiven yet until you do this. And of course, that's just works. We just repackaged works under a different guise and called it the 4 spiritual laws or something. Essentially that's what we've done. We've repackaged a message which is really not the truth, and made it to be, this is the way we preach the gospel primarily to a lot of people, sadly. And it is sad. It is very, very sad. But anyway, there we go. So yeah, that's good. That's good. But good and bad, good and sad, really, isn't it? That you were able to help some, but even at that point, it shows how difficult it is for some to accept the forgiveness that actually is free, because they don't feel worthy, because they've been told they don't feel worthy. And I've spoken to a number of spirits and beings who have been told that they are unworthy and they cannot be redeemed or restored. And it's we who have told them, and we do have authority. Essentially our words are powerful. And if those words are bringing death rather than life, Jesus said, well, you're going to have to give account for these words. Don't be idle with your words. In other words, be careful with what you say. You don't want to give an account to giving people bad news.
Yes.
When we have such good news to be able to share with people.
Okay, one quickie. I think it was a couple sessions ago you talked about dealing with the dragon destiny.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, and you said that it transformed into. Okay, and so just a quick question, and I'm not doubting what you experienced, but I want to hear, how were you able to discern that this was not just pulling a fast one on you, since the Bible does say that they can transform into an angel of light, as opposed to this was a real genuine transformation?
Oh, it's a good question. And I think the more you engage in that which is genuine, the more you can discern that which is counterfeit. So it says through practice, we train our senses to discern. And the more you hang out with God and engage in love and engage in joy and peace and rest, the easier it is to discern that which isn't. And so when I overshadowed this thing with my spirit, it was within me. So I felt it, you know, I felt what it felt. I felt its pain, its separation, its isolation, and then I felt its joy and celebration. And there was nothing counterfeit about that. But I would suggest that people don't get into this stuff unless they are discerning. You know, I wouldn't encourage anybody without a mandate from God to do it. Now, subsequently, I've gone back and I've engaged 2 more of those fallen ones in the same sort of way, and saw those restored into a bench of 3 with the other one. So I have more than one testimony to having done it. And it was a very similar type of experience. But you know, if your senses are trained in engaging the good, I think will discern anything which isn't, you know. And in a sense, you know, it doesn't really talk about fallen angels transforming themselves specifically. It talks more about Satan transforming himself back to who he was, I guess. But in a sense, I think we should be careful, and I think we should be sensitive to these things and not just jump into it. You know, I wouldn't encourage anyone to do anything like that unless they had gone through a process of transformation themselves, so that they were in a place where they could discern in that way. Now, the ongoing proof of that is what they carry on doing. And if you continue to engage with them, particularly if they're part of your sphere of authority or within your area or remit, then you can begin to continue to see what they're doing and observe and, cooperate, see them cooperate with you in what you have authority to do. So I think it's not just a one-off, hey, I'm going to do this hit and run. I'm looking for a relationship. You know, generally, I'm not going to go out there trying restoring anything just because I can.
Yeah.
I'm going to engage with those that are part of my sphere that I will have an ongoing connection to. Unless God tells me specifically to do something, you know, I would. But generally, I'm looking for a relationship, full stop. You know, I'm looking to engage with people in a relational way, rather than just in, hey, I'm going to go and preach do a conference, or, you know, I want ongoing relationship. And I think it's the same in this. God is a relational God, and he wants us to be like him. And he has a relationship that way. And if there's any doubt, I would ask the Father to come and say, hey, yeah, is this real? You know, show me.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, teach me here, you know, if there's any way which I'm unsure, and if I got a check in my spirit and was unsure, I would go to him and ask, because he was the one who was standing there with me.
Okay.
He showed me how to do it. So he was there with me. So I doubt whether they could fool him, even if they actually could fool me. So,
yeah.
You know, so I think there's always that safeguard of, hey, if you're in doubt, let's go and ask the Father to adjudicate.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because we had lunch with Pam Tidmore when we were up in Tennessee. The reason I wasn't on the call is our friend's internet is like dial-up, does not work. But anyway, so she was, and I think she shared the experience she had. I think she said she told you about going into the bank and dealing with that, which was really a fascinating story. And I was like, wow, that's really interesting. But then I thought, as we were driving home, I said, okay, but yeah, but scripture says, you know, that they can transform, you know, and yet I have no doubt that what she had was legit. But just saying, okay, well, now how would you know if this was real or not? So that's the reason why I brought it up, to just say, a little bit of clarification there. Not that I've been put in that position and I'm actively seeking to do that, but just to say, there's got to be a way that you can measure to know what's going on.
Yeah, and I would encourage everyone to be cautious and discerning over anything to do with it, because the same thing would apply to casting out demons. You know, in a sense, you know, how do you know they've gone? Sometimes I did a lot of deliverance back in the day, and, you know, they would submerge, they would try and hide, they would try and hide behind other things, they would kick other things out to make it look like they'd left. You know, and I had the whole gamut of different experiences with deliverance, and you got to be discerning. You know, you've got to be discerning. You didn't just go on external symptoms. You didn't just go, you use your discernment to know whether they'd left or not. Even sometimes in spite of the manifestations or the screaming or the other things that went on to indicate that some things had potentially left, you know, and I also learned that in my own life, you know, that, you know, I mean, I used to deliver myself quite a lot, you know, when we got into deliverance, not having, you know, a lot of people not around always. And I learned in my own life to know this isn't gone, you know, this actually, I know that isn't, because I felt it and I knew the difference, you know. And the same thing then when you started to work on familiar spirits and engaging with the courts and all of that type of stuff, you know, where were they gone, what happened to them? I do believe it is a real sense where we do need to operate with a discernment and learn and practice that until we get better. And if we're, you know, if we're learning, then we ask for distinguishing of spirits as a gift of the Holy Spirit. If we're maybe not in that place where we feel completely confident in our own ability, then we can call on the Holy Spirit for the distinguishing of spirits to actually see what is going on here, because that's what that gift does. It distinguishes between the spirit, soul, body, flesh, and everything else. You know, what is this? So I think that also would be a way to measure something in that sort of area. But I do believe you do get to be more confident, but I shouldn't say we should never get overconfident.
Right. And you made a really good point. You do it when you have the mandate to do it. You just don't go running out there trying to. No. Because that's falling back into the same trap of, you know, you're going to run around and you're going to pull down every demonic thing, and like, yeah, but you don't have you've not been authorized to do it, and, you know, you can get in over your head and really get into a lot of trouble. And
to be honest, now I tend to shy away from descriptions which are graphic about what these things look like dragons and that type of thing, and really just stick to, hey, that whatever they are, they're fallen from their position, and I want to see them restored, and I don't want to label them, you know. So in a sense, just like I wouldn't want to label someone a sinner or label someone, you know, that I'm also now more circumspect in thinking about how I describe things and how I declare things to be, because I know that what I say can have an effect. You know, so I even in that I feel more, I guess, compassionate in the way in which I would describe something, and I'm not wanting to label it in a way, because that could confirm what others may have said of what you do to dragons and this sort of stuff, you know, chop their heads off and split them open and do all that sort of stuff, you know, which, so for me, it's like, I'd rather now, I find myself feeling different and thinking different about it. Therefore, what I say is different, and how I describe things would be different. Okay. Oh, just one other quick question. I saw that you've got Restoration of All Things Part 2 coming up. Is that going to be live streamed? And is Justin Abraham not going to be with it this time? Because he's not listed as a participant. He isn't yet, no. I'm actually meeting with him tomorrow and Lindy for the day. We're having a day together. So I'll find out whether he's available or not tomorrow. But we had to get on and advertise it because of the time with the hotel. Because it's a residential, we had to pay a deposit by a certain date. So so we had to advertise it before live streaming. We're not sure whether we will live stream it, because we're not sure yet of the internet capabilities of the venue, and the stability of it. We will definitely be recording it, both video and audio, and we may well make those we'll certainly make them available later. Whether we will do it as a sort of a slightly offset thing of, you know, after the session we'll upload it so that people can then see it shortly behind, possibly.
Okay.
But we haven't sort of completely come to a decision yet, because we've not actually checked out fully the actual venue for that type of thing yet. So.
Okay, just wanted to check in on that. I'll be quiet now.
Okay, Robin, you got your hand up there.
Yes, good morning, Mike. Good morning,
Hi.
everybody. I had a question on a different topic. I've been looking into a little bit about audio frequency, and I've just, you know, in a sense, really begun to explore this topic. And I discovered actually there are quite a few differences in people's opinions regarding the best frequency to produce a heavenly one. Some I believe have used like 400 hertz, some 440, and some 532, and so on and so forth. People like that I've stumbled into, people like Leonard Jones and Kevin Zadai, I think Joanne McFadder also, and there are others. Using those frequencies as their standard tuning. And also, I've noted little is really said about harmonic tuning. And I have some familiarity with, for example, Pythagorean tuning. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's an unbelievably resonant tuning. It was used in the Middle Ages, for example, and it's based around intervals of, you know, when you do the tuning, you're tuning by fifths. So you have pure fourths, fifths, and pure eighth intervals, which make the thirds a little bit wide and almost a dissonance. And when you compare Pythagorean tuning, which is amazing, to mean temperament, which we use today, you know, our pianos and our keyboards are all tuned to that tuning, you come to realize, my goodness, the piano to people's ears will always sound out of tune, because it is. So the intervals are just slightly out of tune to give the musician accessibility to play in all the different keys. So, but anyway, I was just wondering what your take is regarding you know, the different musical frequencies, if you have an opinion as which one seems the most heavenly, since they're talking about that, and you know, anything that you might have to offer to the discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a musician, and I think in some ways that's a good thing, because I don't know what I'm talking about, so I just do whatever God says. So from that perspective, I don't know the tech sort of behind a lot of it, or the theory behind it. I'm aware, obviously, of what the general concert pitch is for and what people are tuning things in. I think here we tuned into 440, I think, and we have also done 432 and 444. So we've had different frequencies depending on what was going on. I know Samuel here, who does a lot of our background music and composes a lot of that with intent. He really uses whatever frequency he feels led to do at the time, and I don't think there is a wrong one. Mm-hmm. I think it's about what is it that we're using it for. What's its purpose? What is the intent that we impart through it? Mm-hmm. Therefore, we only really just need to do whatever God says. Mm-hmm. I think our intent is as important as what frequency we're playing, because you could play a frequency and an chord in that frequency and have the intent of rest, or you could have the intent of love, or you could have the intent of joy, or you could have the intent of restoration, or anything, healing. You know, obviously people have sort of, 528 as a healing frequency. Therefore, I think tuning your instrument so that 528 becomes one of the notes. So I can see in it, I think. So it would depend on what you're doing. And mm-hmm. I think some of the people here, yeah, do have some knowledge of fifths and all of that type of stuff. Personally, I use bowls, so I use whatever it is, and I just do whatever I feel led to do. So sometimes I'll mix several different notes, together, but it's the way I play it and the way I use it, rather than just the fact that I'm hitting this bowl and that bowl and another bowl. I just go instinctively with where my spirit leads, which I guess a lot of musicians would do when they're very competent with their instrument. They don't think about what they're playing or how, they just flow. And I think once you get to a flow, I think that flow then means your spirit is engaged with it, and you're mixing your spiritual frequency with what you're doing, with whatever, whether it's an instrument or whether it's your own voice as a note, activating notes, energy activation using our voices. All of that, I think, is part of it. And the fact we carry, we are a frequency, and that frequency, when we engage with God, is somewhat elevated. We're entrained to his frequency, and we become more radiating that light, if you like. So I think there's lots to it. I've got a number of friends who are really into it. Dell Hungerford, one of them. She's got a lot of stuff on her website around it all. I know people were talking a lot about the solfeggio frequencies and all of that, and I think some of the people who were talking about that really didn't know what they were talking about, to be honest, technically. That's not to say that certain frequencies don't have a function. I just don't think necessarily they were the hidden, this hidden mysterious frequencies in the Bible or whatever. I think God can use anything, and he'll show you what to do when you need to do it, and I would, or in everything, let's not make things formulaic. Oh, I am going to do this because this is the healing frequency. Well, what if God wanted to use something else? We could be hindering what he wants to do because we know what frequency to use. And frequency in general, I mean, there's a huge amount of stuff out there now, not just to do with music, but also to do with healing and wholeness. Using Rife frequencies and Rife machines to generate frequencies, scanning your body for negative frequencies, the frequencies that are carried by bacteria or any other negative things, metals or anything. You then can hit those things with the same frequency, match it, but with a higher, more power, if you like, and see those things destroyed. But even in that, you've got to be careful that you don't fill yourself with toxins, because you're destroying a whole load of things and not being detoxed from them. So then you need to run detox frequencies. So there's a lot, and I'm drawn to it. And I'm sort of looking at it in a bit, and then you sort of can connect that with quantum physics, and you can then connect it to quantum entanglement, in that you can apply something to a frequency to something that the person doesn't have to be there to experience. Just you need some of their DNA. So you have some of their DNA, you apply the frequency to that, and they don't even need to be present in the session for there to be a remote healing, if you like. Now, we know Jesus did that. He healed the centurion's servant without having to visit. How? Well, by quantum entanglement, and he used certain abilities to be able to engage with, and he related to the servant through the emotions of the centurion. That gave him his access point, because he was a servant of the centurion who had authority to bless him. So Jesus activated the blessing through the desire of the centurion. That is a type of resonance that opens this up. So there's a lot really in this. I think there's a whole lot of stuff around Rife machines and generating frequencies to do with the healing sphere, which is becoming more well known, but there's opposition to it. Hence, in the US, it's illegal to, I think, sell rifle machines. But you can get them from abroad, so you can, whether you can import them legally, I'm not sure. You can get them in Canada, that's for sure. But it is one of those things that you can see. This is powerful, and I think God is using it. But we've got to sort of learn, you know, and learn to discern it. You know, using some frequencies, you can deal with things like molds in your home by using a thing of mold. You know, just get the frequency and then basically banish the mold from your house, you know, by doing it remotely. Same thing with insects in your garden. You know, there's lots of testimonies of people who basically apply it to green fly, black fly, and everything, and then they effectively have a field of energy which stops those things coming, because you engage their frequency, and then you produce a field that matches their frequency. And of course, if you match a frequency, then it's destructive. Hence, you know, the opera singer, you know, producing a note which resonates with the glass, and the glass can shatter. Well, that is the same, I guess, the same theory behind, you know, dealing with those type of things in the same way. If you can match a frequency, then you can destroy something. But also we want, therefore, to then use healing frequencies to restore things. So, you know, there's a lot to it. But
yeah, I had a friend who had a rifle machine over in Israel. I have no idea how it turned out for him, but that's very interesting. And I also, you know, I just like listening to Steve Hampton on his singing bowls. And I mean, I was thinking too, there's this whole thing about rocks having frequencies, and, you know, you see a lot of New Agers using stones for healing and all of that. Do you have some sort of take about that as well?
Yeah, I mean, you know, heaven is full of gemstones and stuff. You know, all the foundations of the New Jerusalem are 12 stones. You know, the gates are stones. There's stones on the walls, you know, representing, you know, not a physical thing, but a spiritual dynamic. So yes, I would definitely believe there is something to that. We do have a lot of gemstones here. Steve Hampton gave me a bag full of them when I was in Seattle a couple of years ago, and we do encourage people to use them. I think radionics is another subset of this type of thing, frequency, which you can then do that. You know, there are issues around colloidal silver, colloidal gold, in which you can produce that and drink it. You can impart frequencies into water and drink the water. You know, there's a lot of stuff around plasma. Friends of mine in Canada, they're doing a lot of stuff around plasma. Therefore, they're producing fields on water vessels that have a positive and negative field, and therefore they create within the water a plasma field, and that is producing health and wholeness. There's the whole thing of ASEA, which is again a liquid which has been manufactured to restore the cell communicating. So within the mitochondria of cells, there's a communication system that when the cells are young, they can communicate with the body to the lymph system and the repair systems to basically come and say, repair me or destroy me and renew me, and I want to be another one. So now that ability gets old, and the communication is less. So you can, by engaging with ASEA, you can drink it, and it begins to produce the cells restoration in that communication, and then they repair themselves. So you're more healthy. The same thing would apply to, they have a renewal gel, that they have a gel that is applied to the skin, and it works really efficiently. And my wife's got some. you can apply it quickly. I think they call it 5 in 6 or something, 5 times in 6 minutes or something. And we've seen burns completely restored. My daughter, a couple of weeks ago, she fell, twisted her knee, and probably, looked like she fractured her patella. We applied this gel to it, numerous times in a short period of time, and she was fine. She then slipped at work, twisted her ankle and had a black ankle, swollen, couldn't walk on it. Applied this,
Oh, no.
she's walking, So there is a lot around these type of issues, which there are different ways people are doing it. And I think they're all got some validity to them. You just got to find something that you feel connected to and go with that. And therefore, we know David played an instrument that did something with Saul, and the sort of the demonic activity that was going on with him subsided because of playing an instrument. So I think there is some warrant for it. I do think there's more to learn, but do what God shows you to do and get involved in the stuff he shows you to get involved with. And if you don't resonate with something, park it. I wouldn't sort of come out against anything specifically at this point without taking it to God and asking for some insight into it. I wouldn't rule things out, but I'm not gullible to accept everything without having some discernment about it. And there are a few things out there which I'm not sure over, and I certainly wouldn't be in any way encouraging or promoting. But the things that I have experience with, then I'm happy to share the experiences and encourage people to pursue God for their own in these areas. And there's a lot of things with music therapy, light therapy, and some of that is just, it is electromagnetic frequency, an energy field that's produced in different ways, so, obviously that in some quarters would not go down too well. Years ago, I would have done seminars against getting involved in some of these things, but now I realize that you counterfeit that which is real. You don't counterfeit that which isn't. That being said, I'm not saying that there is a real to everything out there, and I do think we need to be discerning to check it out and to take it back to God and whatever. And there are a few things that the jury's out, and I don't really talk about because I'm not sure, and I have a check in my spirit that maybe just because I've not yet experienced that, or at this point in time, that's not something God wants me to pursue in that way. So I have an open mind, but the jury's out on some things. But yeah, very interesting topic, and I think God is restoring our connecting to energy healing. I mean, next year I'm in Phoenix in March with Carrie Browning and I think Michael Tyrrell, the guy with Whole Tones, and a few others involved in a seminar on quantum faith and all around this sort of type of subjects, which is a departure for me. And in one sense, I know Carrie Browning, we're friends, so she's invited me to go to share some of my perspective on my encounters with quantum physics from the heavenly realms and how that outworked, but they're very much into using frequencies, fragrant oils. Obviously, there's stuff to do with sound, but also to do with flower essences and other things which are natural things, you could say, that God may have built within creation that carry that. And I think crystals and other things also may well be sort of part of that type of dynamic.
That sounds really. And one more question: what is your take on Reiki? I'll be honest, I've always been very oh my goodness, very new age. And
well, if you think of laying hands on people, that's what Jesus told us to do. So that's all they're doing. They're laying hands on people and directing an energy field. Now, I would not be saying that every practitioner of doing that is doing it through the right source. And some people who are practitioners of those things may not know their source, and their source may well be God, but they're not really aware of it. I've talked to a number of them when it comes to music and sound and other healing type modals, and some of them don't know. And I discerned that, hey, God was using them, but they just didn't really know the actual source as a person, but they weren't doing anything bad. There were some that I discerned had something dark about them, and I wouldn't certainly want to be involved with that. And some of it again is the person, you know. The right person can do something and it can be okay, and the wrong person could do something and it might not be okay. The thing itself is neutral, but the intention of the person who's using it, you know, you need discernment in it. So Reiki in itself, you know, would I be going to someone who did Reiki? No, I wouldn't need to, in a sense, because I have my own way of engaging God for healing and living in health. I would be discerning, but I wouldn't throw out the actual the sort of the concept and say the concept is wrong, but it may well have been used wrongly or used, you know, with someone who is not necessarily flowing from the right source. Therefore, it can lead a deposit of darkness rather than light. But in a sense, when I've ministered to people, laying hands on people, I create an energy field. I know how to generate an energy field from within. I know how to direct that energy field. I can direct that to people's DNA. I can direct that to people's cells. I can direct it to trauma trapped through discernment, but it is an energy field and it can be directed, which is very similar to Reiki. Am I using any sort of, I've never even seen Reiki or had anything to do with it. So I've got no idea really about and I'm not really interested in the actual specifics of what other people are doing, but I do think that God is inspiring believers to take some of those principles that they're his principles and to apply them in that way. Now, you know, if someone takes what Jesus said, lay hands on the sick and see them recover, and then sees what Paul did in laying hands on handkerchiefs and aprons, and those were then imparted to others at a distance, and Peter's shadow healing people, or the energy field that he's created the shadow with, healing people, then there's a lot in there which is mysterious and not just, well, lay hands on hope for the best. And some people in faith will just do what Jesus said and they will see some results. Other people, it's not easy to teach other people if you just say, well, it just works and I don't know how. You know, so for some people, if you're going to teach other people, just saying, well, do this and hope for the best may not work for them. So having some principles so they can learn what to do is helpful. And so I want to know how things work. Part of the teacher in me wants to be able to explain to people who need to know so they can actually do it. And God showed me how to do some of these things, how to control vibrational frequency of matter to transform it, how to walk on water by controlling the frequency of the vibration of the energy within the molecules of the water so that they were solid. You know, these are scientific things that are done by Jesus, who created everything in the first place. You know, he created it with all these things built into creation. You know, everything with quantum physics. Quantum physics is just the discovery of what Jesus did to create everything using strings of energy, which is the vibrational frequency of his voice, which is his grace, his divine enabling power, which holds everything together. It's all in the Bible, just not framed in the scientific terms that we would use today, but the principles are there. There's nothing wrong in finding out about the science and applying it. So when God spoke to me about directing energy from within, rivers of living water flowing from innermost being, whatever, he showed me that within me, there is the grace of God vibrating for strings of energy, which is the capacity to actually release that energy. And within other things, there's also vibrational things which may be at a lower frequency that I can direct. So the way he showed me was to direct energy through my faith gate and to then connect to the grace within my hand and see it start to vibrate. Now, when people lay hands on people, sometimes they feel heat or electricity or energy. Now, most people don't know how. They just sort of see it as the anointing. Well, the anointing's upon me, so my hand is hot, you know. Well, actually, you can generate that heat, that energy yourself, not just rely on the Holy Spirit giving you a gift of healing and energizing you to do something. We can learn through our spirit to direct that energy and then direct it towards something specific that we've been shown or we can discern. William Branham, who is one of the healing evangelists of the 40s, 50s, 60s, could discern by touching a person's hand the vibrational frequency that they had, the sickness they had. And he would tell them diagnose their sickness by touching them and feeling the frequency, the vibration. Now, he said that an angel taught him how to do that. And he has remarkable testimonies of powerful healings that took place through doing that type of thing. Now, a lot of people, you know, who believe he was a great healer, believe God used him as a healing evangelist and everything like that, which is great. If they heard probably how he did it, they would have probably been very suspicious of that. But they were very happy to see the healings, but they're very suspicious when you start talking about frequency and energy, because it is, quote, new agey. But actually, it's just ancient age. It's not new age. It's what God built into the fabric of creation, vibrational energy. It's what holds the whole of creation together. You know, 0 point energy, the energy of the supernatural realm that holds this realm together. I mean, it's all sort of science, really. You know, now, you know, some people would call it pseudoscience, you know, but the reality is the quantum physicists are discovering things are spooky. You know, Einstein called it spooky. That's what he called it, this spooky stuff. You know, quantum entanglement is spooky stuff, you know, and actually from our religious sense, you know, we would see it as spooky stuff as well, but don't be put off just because it's weird. You know, Jesus did some pretty weird stuff. God told some of the Old Testament prophets to do some pretty weird stuff. Just because it's weird doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong. So some discernment needs to be in place. Don't accept everything or anything, but discern that which God wants you to engage in and that which he doesn't, and pursue that which he does and forget that which he doesn't. You know, that would be my encouragement in all of this type of things. You know, don't get drawn to it because it's interesting, but engage it if you feel that you do resonate with it. You know, I mean, I'm certainly not involved in music or anything like that, but when God unveiled the whole crystal bowl things to me, I pursued it and I use them. You know, I use them to help declarations. Sometimes I come into my office in the morning and I just feel I want to fill this room with love, joy, and peace. And I use the frequency of the bowls to do it, carrying my intent to fill the atmosphere with a vibrational energy. You know, I can do that through my own body, through the energy gates that I have within. I can also activate them. You know, Nancy Cohen does teaching on the Merkaba and how to activate, you know, unlimitless energy. You know, it's all pretty weird stuff. But, you know, I've got the Merkaba picture on my wall, you know, and I've seen it and I've engaged it, and I know the wheels within the wheels are a power source of heaven, but they're vibrational frequencies that are connecting together to form energy gates and activation points. So
one of the hindrances for me has been the belief that there is a separation between science, as we know science, and God's word. Now I see that's being sort of dismantled, but he sort of helped me with that, to further that, because I thought that the laws of physics and the Newtonian and quantum mechanics, all that stuff, operated separately outside of God. And when God said something, that his person, his being superseded. He was like creating his own privileged channel with us as people. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. It's just that I think God uses the laws that he created.
Okay.
He doesn't need to supersede them. You could see that they were superseding natural laws. So
Yes.
the Newtonian type of physics, which is cause and effect, and the laws of thermodynamics and all that type of stuff, you could see that they are the laws of this realm, but they are higher laws of the heavenly realm, and you're really bringing the higher laws, which is what we call a miracle. We're calling a miracle that which is a higher law operating in a lower realm to change things in that realm to align with the higher heavenly law. And in a sense, it's not that God is breaking his laws, he's using higher ones, but they're the ones he created. The quantum physics stuff we're discovering, he created.
Yeah.
It's not something we made up. We're just discovering it and then beginning to realize that we have access to use it. And quantum observation and using our mind to create realities and choose realities and alter realities and effectively bring a heavenly reality into an earth. Well, isn't that the kingdom come will be done on earth as it is in heaven? It's just another way of putting it. That's a quantum physics expression for me.
Sure.
People would have no understanding of that, but that's okay.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, very good. Yeah. That's really been a stumbling block for me in the past.
Well, I think there are lots of stumbling blocks, really. There are religious stumbling blocks, there are cultural stumbling blocks, there are the way in which I was taught that all these things are wrong, to be suspicious of everything, and science in itself. I mean, how much has the church over the last 1,000 years opposed science?
Sure.
As in opposing sort of the universe and how it functions, and everything revolves around the earth. Well, actually, no, it doesn't. And people were burnt at the stake and called heretics.
Sure, they were.
But the things are different, and they were proved to be right. But religion opposed it. Now, how much of the New Age stuff that is there, we've just abandoned our sonship role within creation and let others take all that and pervert it and counterfeit it when we should have been taking the lead. Same with quantum physics. When quantum physicists were looking for a philosophy that explained some of their discoveries, which are weird, they are weird discoveries.
Sure.
When they began to look for a worldview, they could not find it in the Western Judeo-Christian tradition because of our reticence to accept anything supernatural. So they looked to a more Eastern philosophy and then became more of a pantheistic, non-personal force or entity or universe, whatever, to actually fit with what their beliefs are. Now, I believe the whole Christian perspective to quantum physics is very clearly within the Bible, and there isn't no need to see it as a separation, but we did that, and therefore we allowed all those quantum physicists to go and find a worldview which inherently is not right and reject a worldview which is right because we made it unpalatable through not accepting science or not seeing that the Bible has a lot to say about those things, just not usually in scientific terms. Hebrews and Colossians, they talk about these things. Everything that was made came from that which you can't see. Well, it isn't saying invisible from it doesn't exist. It's just saying you can't see it with your physical eyes, but there are particles that exist at a subatomic level, at an atomic level, which you can't see, but everything has come out of that realm into this realm. Everything exists that has formed in that way. Now we know how. When God inspired that writer to write that, he probably didn't know how, you know. And you know, when Paul was inspired to write something, I think he saw how, but didn't have the words of science to be able to describe it, so described it the best he could, you know. And now we can then resonate with that today and find, oh yeah, that makes total sense now from a quantum physics perspective, that everything forms from particles that are unseen, vibrational strings of energy that are the building blocks of everything that exists. And as soon as you start to interact with energy, with your thoughts and the power of your mind, then energy can be bent to your choice. Photons can begin to form reality around you when they align to your choice. And we do that all day, every day. We just don't do it deliberately. Therefore, we keep replicating the past rather than creating a different future. So as soon as you start to choose a different future, that future will begin to start manifesting around you. We just have not been taught how to do it. Well, it's time we started to take a lead in these things, and really embrace taking the lead and then bringing people with us rather than dragging behind or resisting or telling people that they're wrong and everything's wrong because we don't understand it, you know. So yeah, there's a lot in all that, I think, which God does want us to engage with, not to be afraid of. But some people will find it more resonant than others, you know. And some people, my wife is just like, well, I just do it, you know. You know, but then she got into trauma release and everything, and it helped her to understand how what that does to be able then to do it. So she's sort of adopting a little bit more of a, yeah, it is good to understand sometimes, you know, so that then you can apply that into different situations rather than hoping for the best. You know, some people, you know, use a scalpel, and some people use a, you know, scattergun approach. You know, I'll pray everything and hope something hits home and someone gets healed. Or, hey, I've got a scalpel here or a laser that can point directly into this situation. I'm going to speak into it and direct energy into it to heal. You know, I think Jesus was pretty aware of everything that was going on in a spiritual sense. So he was directing what he was doing, you know, but people could still draw energy from him and got healed. So whatever he was carrying, because it did, he said people touched him and he perceived that power went from him. So people could draw. And I don't think Peter had much of a clue that the energy field that he was creating was healing somebody. But maybe he did. I don't know. Maybe I'll go and talk to him and ask him and find out whether he knew what his shadow was, or whether he knew you can't have a shadow without light, and light is actually what produces a shadow. Well, light is just electromagnetic energy field, you know, in a way.